All right, welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Phoennik from South Fayette Township Police Department in Pennsylvania. 39 years experience in law enforcement, 11 years experience being the chief. Really looking forward to this conversation. So, welcome to the show, Chief Phoennik. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. You have been in this career a long time and you have been the chief for a long time. Like, I know that, there's maybe a statistic that chiefs only make it maybe 3 or 4 years, and you've far surpassed that. So, I was really interested in getting a little bit of background into you and how did you get started in this profession? And how have you made it 39 years and 11 years as the chief so far?
That's a good question. When I was 17, 18 years old, I had no direction at all. I was going to go into the Army, but before that decision was made, I befriended a few local police officers from a jurisdiction near me, who came up with the fact that, you could pay your way through the police academy. And if I did that, they would get me in touch with a chief in a local department that would start part-time, get my experience, take some civil service tests, and then take tests and move on and hopefully become full-time. And that's how I got started in it. And that was back in 1985. I went through our county's academy in 1986, and I started in law enforcement May 1st of 1986, which is a little over 39 years ago. And I've been with the South Fayette Township Police Department for the past 36 years. As you mentioned, I've been chief for 11 years, but I've been in a leadership position for the past 25 years. I was a sergeant starting in 2000, and then I became a captain in 2002 and the chief in 2014. So I have a lot of experience with leadership. Through the years, I learned a lot of things of what not to do and what to do, and that was a learning experience. And I believe that by with that experience and gaining that experience through the do's and don'ts of what I saw other officers do or leaders do, I was always blessed to be in that position, to be able to be in the right position to do the right thing to come where I am today.
I love that.
So.
I really appreciated that first sentence of like, I really didn't have a lot of direction. And then you befriended a couple people. Would you say that those people kind of served as mentors for you, where they were like, hey, like this could be something that gives you that direction and that purpose that you're looking for?
Yeah, they did, and they were mentors to me. I befriended them and I stayed friends with them until their retirements.
Mm.
But again, when you're, in a situation when you're 17, 18 years old and you never thought, like a lot of police officers to get into this profession, their parents, their dad or mom were police officers, or they always knew what they wanted to do. That wasn't the case with me. So I needed that one little opportunity and the chance meeting with these two officers to give me that direction. And the opportunity presented itself, and thankfully I took it and I made something out of it. So I'm always indebted to those two officers for giving me the direction that I did not have when I was a young man growing up.
I love that. And I think it's a testament to anyone who's listening that you really never know the impact that you can have on someone else's life, and I'm sure in that moment when you befriended them, they never thought that today, 39 years later, you would be talking about them in the way that you are now. And I think we all have that power to impact other people's lives in a positive way. And I can relate to what you said of like maybe not setting out to do what you're doing now, but kind of finding yourself there and it being the best thing ever, and we talked a
Hmm.
little bit offline and I told you like, because I get that question all the time too, like why or how did you get where you are and like working
Yeah,
in law
right.
enforcement, and it's like, wow, it's, I met one person that was really passionate about wellness in the first responder space and was like way ahead of his time. And he was like, hey, can you help me? And, I had no intention at all to be working, in this space and,
Hmm.
having these conversations that I'm having today. But it just took that one person to kind of influence that trajectory of my life. And so I think that. anyone who's listening, like you have the power to positively influence someone's life, and don't underestimate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have tried through the years to pass that on to others. And as we'll talk later, I kind of implement that in my um, the value of the employee, and I can talk about that a little bit later. But I've tried to pass it on to others that aren't sure about what they want to do, and maybe, hey, maybe a military, or doesn't have to be a police officer, it might be a fireman, something along the line as a first responder, to help set them on their way. Um, for 11 years, I taught the DARE program in our local school. And to this day, I still have DARE students that I had back in fifth grade that have stayed local, that still come up to me and thank me for different things that I might have said that I didn't even realize I was helping them,
Yeah,
and gave them some direction. So it's generally, the job is a thankless kind of job because you're always dealing with the negative of human nature, but it's so rewarding when you hear somebody thank you for doing your job, and it
yeah.
makes you feel good and like, I made the right choice in my career.
I agree. I think that's the
So,
best feeling
yeah.
ever. And you said that, throughout your career, you've been in leadership a long time, and you made that statement of, I learned what to do and I learned maybe what not to do. Is there one leadership lesson that really stuck with you that you could share with our listeners?
On the positive side of it,
Yeah, let's go
because
positive.
I'm a believer that you can learn more from wrong leadership.
Yeah,
It's like in sports,
let's
you
do both.
learn, yeah, you learn more from losing than
Mm,
you do winning. I mean, everything's great, and wonderful when you're winning.
hmm.
But where's the character? What type of person are you when you're against it? And you're losing. So
Yeah.
I equate a lot of things to sports. But I've worked for 7 different chiefs over the years. Some of them didn't put value on the employee. They kind of said, it's your job, just do it. But in today's world, these officers need a little pat on the back,
Mm,
especially in the last 5, 6 years when society seems to be throwing them a curveball and not liking them. They could do everything right and they're being scrutinized in the media or whatever. It's nice that they get a pat on the back. And one of the things that I took from one of my true mentor, chiefs, old chiefs, to put value on your employees.
mm,
By putting value on your employees, you're indirectly or directly changing the culture of the department, building morale. And I've known through the years that if an officer is coming to work and they're not generally happy with their work environment, they're going to inevitably take it out on the people that they're dealing with on a daily basis. Now, we're human too. We recruit from the human race, but there's particular types of characteristics I look for when we're hiring people. Somebody that's going to be able to, you're going to be able to talk to, knows how to talk to somebody. So putting value on the officer, on the employee, kind of changes their mindset to where you're minimizing any kind of more confrontations or negative confrontations or um, communications when they're out in the field. So to me, putting that value on them is the utmost importance. Creating an environment and a culture to where they want to be here, they want to work, they want to do the right thing for the right reasons. And I always explain to guys, that woman that has the flat tire along the side of the road, or that might be her only interaction with law enforcement in her whole life, and how you treat that person is what she's going to spread. That officer was so nice, he helped change the tire. It's somebody's sister, it's somebody's mother, it's somebody's relative. Think if your loved one was on the side of the road, you would want their encounter with a first responder, law enforcement, to be a positive one. So I try to instill those things through my daily leadership and different things that we do here. So that's kind of a synopsis of what I try to do here to
yeah.
change the mindset and the wellness of the officer to where they can be better for our community and the people that pay our salaries. And I mentioned earlier on that, we're public servants, and they pay our salaries. So we have to do our job and we have to treat people the right way.
Yeah. I think anyone who's listening can really relate to the feeling of both, right? I'm sure everyone who's listening has been in an environment where they didn't feel valued. And you can like feel what that feels like, or you can remember what that feels like to be in an environment where someone didn't value you. And then the reverse, how good it feels when you feel like you're valued. And I would imagine, and you can, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that when you make your employees feel like they're seen and supported and valued, then that impacts wellness. And I think you kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier of like how you're treated internally is going to impact how that employee treats people externally, right? How they're going to respond to people within the community. I was actually just having a conversation recently, and it wasn't with someone in leadership, it was someone who I was talking to personally, who's in law enforcement. And they were talking about internal stressors. And it was this kind of conversation about not feeling valued. And there was a change in leadership, and they were really stressed and they were really sad. You could like feel like how like deflated they felt. And they said, like I've been in this job for a really long time and I've seen the worst, and they had like kind of a graphic explanation, I've seen this, and it was less stressful than how I'm feeling now, with how I'm being treated by leadership. And it really stuck with me because I do think that the way that you're treated really does impact your wellness overall. Like this was something where they were just like, man, I don't even know if I can keep going. And then the reverse is true. If you feel uplifted and valued, it makes the hard days and the hard things that you have to go through maybe not easy, but easier. At least you feel like you're uplifted a little bit. And so do you see that when you invest in your people and really put that value into your people, that it impacts morale and wellness? And do you see a direct impact with how they respond to the community?
I do see that, and professionally, I lived through the a negative period of my career. But I tried to learn from that. I tried to take that and say to myself when I was going through that, as hard as it was, that I would never want to put somebody through the mental anguish that I was feeling. And that's why, I have an open door policy. Our officers know they can come and talk to me at any time. They know that they're valued, and it does have a direct impact. No matter what the leader, if it's bad leadership, it's going to have an impact. If it's positive leadership, it's going to have an impact.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we want to have a good, positive interaction and impact and relationship with our residents.
Yeah. I have you ever heard the old adage of like hurt people hurt people? Have you heard
Yes.
of this?
Hmm.
So I really appreciate that you were like, you know what? Like I've been through that. Like I know what it's like to not be treated well. And then you have this crossroad moments where like you get to decide, do you want to treat people in the way that you've been treated? Or do you want to take that as a learning opportunity and a growth opportunity and say, hey, like, unfortunately, I had to go through that. And I don't want anyone else to go through that. And so I'm going to make sure that when I step into a leadership role, I'm going to do things the opposite. I'm going to do things differently. And I think sometimes we hear like these, adages or these things where it's like, almost like inevitable that if you are treated in a certain way that means that you are then going to treat other people in that same way, and it takes the responsibility off of ourselves. And I've had that experience in my life too, where everyone's like, oh well, you're just going to end up just like your parents or whatever. And it's like, you know what, I think we all have that opportunity, and good on you to sit there and realize like, hey, like unfortunately I had to go through this and that was not the best and it didn't make me feel very good, but I'm going to make it my mission to reverse that when I'm in a leadership role.
Yeah, and I think it takes a certain amount of strength to be able to break that cycle because it's very hard to break that cycle. It really is. And there's been different, like our officers were conditioned to do things certain ways because we always did it. That's a big thing in law enforcement. We're going to continue to do it because we've always done it that way. And I tried to break that cycle. Just because we did it that way doesn't make that it's not necessarily wrong, but there's a better way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even used that, paraphrase with officers. We have to be strong enough to break that cycle of what was, done. And just to throw an example out there, it used to be officers, um, you know, when they got older, they would get the weekends off and the vacation time. So first, so they still get the vacation time first. But I said, to make it fair for everybody, we went from an 8 hour schedule workday to a 12-hour schedule. And some of the senior guys who were now going to have the weekends off, I said, let's try to break that cycle and take care of the younger guys. So instead of having every weekend off, everybody gets every other weekend off. And
Mm,
that's a big thing in law enforcement. You work 15 years. I think I worked 7, 8 years before I had a summer vacation, before I had a weekend off, and those kind of things. But you have to be strong enough to try to break that cycle to make it fair for everybody. And I think by doing that, and I give credit to the older guys that they were able to come to that conclusion. It makes everybody happy because everybody's on equal footing. Now we have every other weekend off when it might be 7, 8 years before an officer, a younger officer, would have a weekend. So
yeah.
those type of little changes like that, I think, go a long way with people that work shift work and weekends and holidays and all those things. I had a chief when I started, when I applied, do you really want to do this job? Your buddies are going to be going out on, New Year's Eve or Christmas. They're going to be going out to the bars and partying and everything, and then you're going to have to come to work, you know? So we do have an obligation to work shifts and weekends, but let's make it the best scenario that we can. So the way we do things here is every other weekend off. So it works out for everybody. So
Yeah. Well, and then
that's just an example.
it creates a team mentality too.
Right.
Everyone is supporting each other. And I think sometimes, and we're all guilty of this, like sometimes you're so inundated in the day to day, we're kind of like head down, working away that we just are kind of on that one track path, and sometimes it takes that moment, like you said, to break the cycle, to zoom out a little bit and be like, is this the most effective way? Or is there a better way? And maybe it is the most effective way, but if we're not asking those questions of, is there a better way to do it, then nothing changes if nothing changes,
Right.
right? And so I think that there always has to be those opportunities, whether that's professionally or personally, in your life, to like zoom out and say, like, am I operating in the best way that I can? Are we doing things in the best way I can? Are there growth opportunities? Are there ways for me as an individual to grow, to be a better teammate, a better partner, to take care of myself better? And sometimes we I think get stuck in this like, I'm so busy that I can't do that, instead of like taking that pause, taking a breath, zooming out a little bit, asking those questions, and then acting accordingly.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel that as a leader, anywhere, you have to self-evaluate. That's one of the responsibilities that you have. You have to self-evaluate, take a step back, look at the totality of everything, and just not have tunnel vision towards things. Like I mentioned earlier, I have an open door policy. I want our officers, and they're aware that they can come to me with any kind of, criticism or suggestions or things that we can do things better. And they know that I'm going to listen to them. And if I feel it's in the best and it makes sense, I want to implement that because again, that in turn is putting value on your employees. You want this job's hard enough. You want people that to make the job as easy as you can for the things that we have to deal with. So to get constant feedback from the guys. Some things I'm going to tell them straight up we can't do it for whatever reason, but for the most part, I think a lot of people generally just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And if you can be a good listener, and they're being heard, I think that goes a long way towards valuing your employees.
Yeah, I think being heard, but then what I heard and what you said too is having an open mind to consider different ways or different perspectives. And that can be really hard, and I think the older we get, the harder it is to have an open mind, because we all have our own perspectives and our own life experiences and preconditioning. And to say that, hey, not only do I have an open door policy where I'm willing to listen, I'm also going to have an open mind to considering the things that are being presented. And if we can make it happen, then we will. And if we won't, I'll be able to at least deliver a why. And I think a lot of people want that, especially the younger generation.
Yeah.
We hear like the
Yeah.
why, and not
Yeah.
just like because I said so. It's like, well, here's why, that may or may not work. And I think that people can get on board with that, instead of just because I said so.
Right. And I've experienced that through most of my career where why do we have to do something or why do we have to do it because I said so or that's what we're going to do? Where this generation generally, all they need is a 5 or 10 second explanation on why you want them to do it. And by doing that, they're fine to go out and do it. They just want an explanation with it.
100.
So yeah, that works a lot. And I do that with all our officers. I tell our supervisors, our sergeants and lieutenant, explain why you want something to be done,
Yeah.
and that you generally works. I'll give you two quick examples of changing and breaking the cycle. We had for years no tattoo, no
Mm.
beard policy. I would get every day, just about every day, officers would come and say, and through the years, by the way, we would test, and we're civil service where we have to abide by certain civil service rules to hire. We passed up a lot of good officers that came back from the military that would have tattoo sleeves, and they would have been perfect here. But we passed up on them because we had a no tattoo policy. So I changed that. Now, as long as the tattoo is not offensive, you give me a reason why you're getting a tattoo, what it's for, whatever. We put that in your file. So if anybody questions anything, this is what it means to that person. So now we have officers that have the tattoo sleeves. The beards we just started last year where they can grow a beard as long as we keep it within, reason and it doesn't look too shaggy.
Mhm.
So those are the two examples, just quick examples off the top of my head that, you know, and I'm 62 years old and I don't have any tattoos and I don't have a beard, but okay, these are different battles that do you want to die on that hill and say no tattoos and then lose out on some good officers just because they have tattoos or a beard doesn't make them a bad officer.
Yeah.
So that's two examples of things that I changed recently, to put value again on the employee, hear what they're saying, see what they want, and then make a decision on it. So,
Well, and that it's all related to wellness, like we had where I'm from Phoenix, so it's hot here in the summer. And we had a lot of agencies that were like that too, where the officers who did have tattoos had to cover them up. And they're out in 120-degree weather, in their uniforms, full long sleeves, trying to cover up everything. And I know that as soon as some of those rules were kind of uplifted, and kind of what you were saying of like as long as XYZ, maybe there are some like different limitations. Of course, you don't want it to be offensive, but they were like, wow, like I just feel so much better. Like
yeah.
I feel like I can be me. Like I feel like I don't have to wear this like hot uniform out in the middle of, Arizona summer. And so I think a lot of those things relate to wellness. And I wanted to kind of not switch gears, but I kind of wanted to touch on something that you said earlier, because I know that you have been at the same agency for almost the entirety of your career. And when you and I talked offline, you really talked about um, how much you care about the community and community policing and the efforts that you guys are making within the community. And I know that you're also one of the fastest growing communities in your area, and you're also one of the safest communities in your area. And we talked about this before about how it's all interconnected, and wellness of the officer impacts the way that they're treating the community, but the reverse is also true. The way that the community treats the officers also impacts wellness. And so I'm interested in hearing a little bit about your strategies for community policing and some of the things that you've done to create that synchronicity and the positive relationships between your agency and the community.
Way back, way back when I was a patrolman, I always had the community-oriented philosophy before it was popular. It came into popularity maybe 30 years ago to where more agencies were doing that. And we had some questionable hires and people that here that were working here before I started or when I started. And I remember early on thinking about if I'm ever blessed to be in a position to where I can hire, I'm going to hire the right type of people for what the community would need because it goes back to you're here to serve the people that live within your community. So the best way to do that is to build communication with them. And how you do that as a policeman is you get out into the community. You do different things, like I mentioned, the homeowners association meetings, the HOA meetings. We send an officer. They go for the first 5 minutes of every neighborhood HOA. They tell them what's going on in that area, what's not going on, what they can do to help, what crime has happened in that area. And they do a report and they bring it back to me, and then I implement what we need to do in that community. I do a coffee with the chief program where I do it quarterly, basically, once every couple months, and I'll meet in various areas of the township, listen to people, um, get their criticisms, get their compliments, see what they want, and basically in an informal setting to where they don't have to come to the police station to make a complaint or whatever. I
Yeah.
took that from a matrix that was done in California. It was coffee with cops. I just took it to a different level and made it coffee with the chief, and we do that. And I work with our communications director with that, and we advertise it on our social media. And might get 5, 10 people there. I might get 30 people there. So um, doing all those different things and implementing these different programs, and I can go on and on with some of the programs that we do. I just believe it's getting out into the community and just not being a face in the car that's collecting a paycheck. And our
Mhm.
guys all understand that. So I think by building that relationship, we get information too. Like you said, they give us information or something that they saw because they know us more on a personal basis, then we can help solve something that might have happened in the community.
Yeah. I like that you said, I take their feedback and their criticism. One of the things that and I think you have to be super strong to be able to do this, but one of the things that I really value is criticism. I want to know the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. Like, what is your candid feedback with the performance and what we're doing? Because as you mentioned at the very beginning of our conversation, I think you can learn more from that too. Like, I do agree with that sentiment that you can learn more from the negativity sometimes, or the mistakes or the challenges, than you can if everyone's telling you you're great all the time. And they're like, you're awesome. We love you. You're great. You're doing a great job. That's great to hear. But where do you go from there? How do
Right.
you improve if everyone's just telling you that you're awesome all the
Yeah,
time?
right.
I want people to be like, hey, like, great job, but how about this? Or like, here's one of the things that we saw that was maybe not the best. Or here's a challenge that I, stumbled upon when XYZ. And so I appreciate that you said, hey, like, we go and we connect with people, but I also want to hear their candid feedback. I want to hear the criticism. I want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between.
Yep. And that goes back to you learn more from sometimes the negative things that happen than the positive. So
Yeah.
again, and one of the things that have played into our officers now being part of the community, we used to get for every 10, calls that we get from residents, 9 of them would be critical or a citizen's complaint kind of thing, and one would be hey, your officers did great. We've completely flip-flopped that. For every 10 calls I get from citizens, 9 of them are they're thanking the officers, your officers did great, and then we might get one that's a complaint. So that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that, and then, body cameras and in-car cameras, and that all feeds into that too, to where our officers know by being videotaped during the shift, hey, I'm going to treat people with some respect, because it's being recorded, just like they know they're being recorded. So again, um, and I think it really only, to be quite honest, it starts with the type of people you hire.
Hmm.
The people that you bring on make a world of a difference. Because patrol, they're the backbone of the police department. They're the ones that are out there on a daily basis that are going to be interacting generally with the community on bad calls, because we're dealing with 5% of the population that has issues and negative, and whether it's domestics, homicides, rapes, you know what I mean? So usually when you come to a police officer, it's something negative. It could be something as simple as a traffic citation. But
Right.
again, how do you treat that person during those times makes a world of a difference. I
Yeah.
hope that answered your question.
Well, I think I mean, it definitely did. And I think it goes back to what you were saying before about value. Like you're putting value into your team, but you're also putting value into your community. You're showing up in different areas of the township and you're saying, hey, we value you. We value your opinion. We value, this community. And, we want to be here for you. And we're, like you said earlier, you said you're public servants, like you are there for them. And so, when the community feels valued, then they're going to respond in a different way too. And I don't think that there's anyone who's listening who can deny the fact that, like, if you had the choice between walking into a room of people that really dislike you and walking into a room of people that, like, really like you would choose the room of people that like you all day long, right? And so
Right.
it's those investments that you're making into your people that are helping them to then, create better relationships in the community, invest more in the community. And now when your officers walk out in the community, it's like walking into a room of people that like them versus dislike them. And then it all circles back to wellness. And I do want to touch on what you said before, and then I want to also dive into a couple things that you guys are doing, in wellness organizationally. But you said it's all about the people that you hire. What qualities do you look for when you're hiring people? Because I know that right now a lot of agencies, and I don't know if you guys are in the same boat, but a lot of agencies are struggling with, the pool of, um, you know, new officers and recruits is smaller than maybe it used to be. And so, how do you balance that with being selective and looking for particular qualities when maybe the pool is a little bit smaller than it used to be?
It's the same here in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
It's that it is across the entire country. The summer 2020 and everything, all the criticisms, right? Some of them right, wrong, George Floyd, all that stuff. That stuff is played into a lot of people now don't want to be police officers. We are trying a few initiatives maybe down the road to try to get more recruits, like paying their way through the police academy. That's an option. Those type of things that we're going to do, but I won't get into that now. But yeah, I it's real simple for me. We have to have a test. They have to score on the test. They have to pass all the oral interview, the written test, and the physical agility test. Once they do that, and we establish a list, I'm looking for a good person. I want somebody that's going to be able to listen, one that's going to understand some constructive criticism at times, somebody that wants to be involved in the community. I don't want somebody that, I don't care if you worked for another agency and you made 400 arrests last year. That doesn't mean very much, if anything, to me. I want to have a good person, somebody that knows our community, which is a bedroom community that has good people in it. And I want somebody to be able to go out there on a daily basis and interact with our residents. Not somebody that is going to look to arrest everybody.
Yeah.
Not every encounter with a person has to end in an arrest or a citation. And I give our officers a lot of discretion on how they handle each call. But I just basically want good people. And it's as simple as that.
Do
You
you
can talk to a good person. They understand where you're coming from. So that's what I look for.
do you think that by having those standards and by looking for those certain values that helps with the overall culture and wellness of the organization?
Absolutely, it does. When you get like you said, the same type of people in the same room that want to do the job for the right reasons and do the right thing for the right reasons, it makes the environment work fine. I mean, because everybody's on the same page, everybody has the same values. Now, you're always going to have arguments and disagreements, and orders or things that I put out that people don't necessarily, officers don't necessarily agree with. But then it goes back to the open door policy. If you think something that's been implemented you disagree with, I'm all ears. I don't care if you're the least senior guy or the most tenured guy on the department. They all have an equal say to me, and I listen to them. I want them to do exactly what I do for them. I want them to do for other people out on the street.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that. I know that there are a few things that you guys are doing organizationally that I want to touch on a little bit and see, what your experience has been with implementing these things. But I know that you guys have implemented jujitsu, you have a gym at the department. Can you give a little bit of insight into the things that you've done organizationally with wellness and maybe the like direct impact that you've seen? You know, maybe we can talk a little bit about like the ROI of doing some of these things.
Yeah, about 6 years ago, our lieutenant who does practice jujitsu came to me and wanted to implement the Gracie law enforcement jujitsu program here. And for 2 years I thought about it because not everybody's into that. So eventually I said, yeah, you know what? It's for an officer safety issue. Most of your confrontations, physical confrontations in law enforcement are going to end up on the ground. Jujitsu is generally a ground combat type of thing. So I sent him away to the Gracie School to become an instructor, and he has instructed our officers on a monthly basis with different techniques and things to help protect themselves and that person when we are in the process of arresting somebody. We also have a gym. We'll be in our new facility here. This will be 2 years in November. So one of the things that I wanted when I was on the vision committee with what we needed or what we thought we would want would be a full functioning gym for weights. And what that does is help plays into our physical well-being. And I allow the officers 1 hour a week to work out on duty. Um, and that has worked out great. They take advantage of it. Our guys come in off duty. They use the gym. Again, physical and mental, well-being. So those are two things that we have that we utilize on a daily basis, pretty much.
I love that you said that it relates to safety because this is something that I have had a couple of conversations about, and I truly believe this too. And so we're on the same wavelength and the same page with this. But I think that there's still a stigma around wellness. And I think it's sometimes just the word, like the words that we use. If we use wellness, sometimes people are like, rolling their eyes and thinking, oh, like wellness, like we don't need that. But when you can relate wellness to safety and we can position it in a way where it's training, this is wellness, but this is also safety training. I
Mhm.
love that you said that because, and you said mentally and physically, you're training yourself to be able to effectively perform the functions of your career in a safe way. And we know that in law enforcement, there is a certain physical standard that is required to be able to do the functions of your career in an effective and safe way. And so I love that you put those two together, that you're like, yes, this is wellness, but this is also safety training. I completely agree with you on that. And my hope is that one day everyone will view it that way, that it's like, hey, like this is only for your best interest, so that when you are out on the streets, you're equipped with everything that you need physically and mentally to be successful.
Yes, exactly. It goes the same thing with the equipment and the things that you provide for the officers. You want to set them up for success, not set them up for failure. And
Yeah.
that plays into the safety issue.
Yeah. Have you seen, I think one of the questions we always get is buy-in, and how do you get people to utilize these resources, to participate in these resources? Now that you guys have had these initiatives, where you're really prioritizing physical fitness and how that relates to mental wellness, have you seen the buy-in grow? Like, are you seeing people really starting to participate and, want to be a part of these initiatives, or what have you seen internally with that?
I have seen some buy-in with the weight room. It's not as big of a buy-in with the jujitsu just because somebody might have a back issue
Yeah.
or something physical where they can't do it. So we make that more voluntary. But a group of our officers will get together, even if it's after shift or, on an off day or something, they'll come up to utilize the mat room to do that. I haven't seen quite the buy-in to that as much as I would like, but I feel it's not one of those things that you can mandate.
Yeah.
Just because people might have a back problem or a shoulder problem, and we don't want to have anybody get hurt. doing those kind of things. But as far as the weight room and the physical working out, there's definitely been a big buy-in. I was really surprised at how often, and we have a sign-in sheet that they use every time, whether they're off duty or on duty, and we go through the sheets. Every day there's people in the gym, so
Yeah.
that's really paid off for us.
Yeah. And I also have a mentality that, maybe someone doesn't participate or take advantage of something today, but maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it's 3 months from now that
It's
they're
always there
that
for
they're
them.
ready. Yeah, and when they're ready, it's there. And I think that sometimes when we talk about buy-in, sometimes there's an attitude of, well, we don't know if people are going to use it, and so we're not going to do it. But I think that if you reverse that and say, you know what, we're going to do it, and when people are ready, we got them. And we're being proactive with that. So I appreciate that you have that same mentality of like, you know what, we're going to do it, and people are utilizing it, and the people who aren't utilizing it, maybe one day they will, and it's there when they need it.
Yep, it's there when you want to do it. So,
Yeah. My a final question for you before we sign off, and I'll kind of give you the floor if we missed anything, but this is for the younger generation. What words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
well, I tell them a lot of things. I have a sit down with every new officer that comes in, and you know, I thought about this for a while, and I'm thinking, what do I really say to most all of the officers? And even after I became chief, I said this to our supervisors at a staff meeting that, you know, it's very important to understand that our career is a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Mm.
Once you get into this line of work and you get 2, 3 years down the road and you've been seeing the negatives and the stuff that you see on a daily basis, about 2, 3 years, you become skewed. And I think it's very important. You start to wish your life away, but I can't wait until I get 25 more years to go. I got 17 more years to go. I can't wait until I get out of here. Not to wish their life away, but more importantly, be your own person, be true to yourself. You're going to have temptations, you're going to have negativity, it's going to be a thankless job. But if you stay true to yourself and keep your values the way they are from the time you were hired, and understand that it's a 25-year career. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You'll be fine. But understand that you want to keep it on the rails, keep everything going for who you are. Be your own person. Don't be influenced by the negativity and the other people from maybe other agencies or whatever that, are more negative and trying to drag you down with them. Because at times you see officers don't want a certain newer officer to do certain things because it might make the older guys look bad or whatever the reason is. Stay true to yourself, do your job, and do things for the right reasons. And that's pretty much the gist I give them in more detail. But I want them to understand that they're here because of what they did. Nobody handed them anything. They earned what they are to be an employee here at South Fayette Township Police Department. Um, but just be true to yourself and understand that it's a long career. Don't get too high with the highs. Don't get too low with the lows. Try to keep an even keel. So those are some of the things that I share with new officers. And I also explain to them that I have an open door. They can come and see me anytime, which they do. And that's all well and good. So some of the advice I give our younger guys.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on
Yep.
here and spending the last hour with me. I really appreciate it. I'm going to give you the floor if I missed anything.
No, I think everything is pretty big. To wrap things up, I just think that as a leader in law enforcement, and that's not easy, um, is just put value on your employees. Make sure that your employees understand that you truly care about them because policemen will know if you're being genuine or not.
Mm.
You just have to make sure that you are truly putting them in a position to succeed, not fail. Too many times you hear of agencies not putting money into what this or that, and they don't have the proper equipment or whatever it is. That strips down people's morale. And if you can do everything in your power and they understand truly and genuinely that you are doing what's best for them, your reward is going to be 10 times that, because they're going to go out and they're going to do their job, what they're supposed to do, and they're going to be happy bees working, you know, and not being upset and taking out their frustrations and anger on the people they're dealing with on a daily basis.
Yeah. No,
So,
100%.
yep,
Thank you, Chief
sure. Thank
Nick. It
you.
was an honor to have you on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who is still listening, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here.
Of course.